I'm excited to have Dr. William H. Koeneke with us today. He's going to talk to us about his top 10 suggestions on how to study smarter, not harder. With over 45 years of experience in education as a teacher, school principal, superintendent of schools, and teaching at 3 universities, Dr. Koeneke has written and published 2 books that he's going to talk with us about today. His first book is a simple guide on English grammar and punctuation. Now, I know that might sound boring, but trust me, your children need this. His second book is Studying Smarter, Not Harder. He holds 5 university degrees from 3 different universities, including his Ph.D. and 2 MS degrees. He was a high school principal at the age of 23 and a school superintendent at the age of 34. He has published numerous journal articles on educational topics and retired in 2012 as a tenured professor at Murray State University in the College of Education. Please join me in welcoming Dr. K. Welcome, Dr. K. I'm so excited to have you join us.
Well, thank you, Denise, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on your program with you. And just want to give a shout out for raising money for people, because I know that college and university is expensive. Personally, I have 5 degrees, so I put some money in. And our grandson graduated from a private school at $48,000 a year tuition. Luckily, wow, he got some scholarships and didn't pay that much, but it's extremely expensive. And so I appreciate your work with people to make it more affordable.
I thank you very much. It is a passion of mine. And one of the things that I found is that, parents and students really need to work together to make things happen for their teens. To me, it's a family affair, right? It's kind of like the old discussion of it takes a village to raise your children. And so that's why I like to bring on people like yourself that have expertise that will help these kids be successful. Because it's not just about finding money and winning scholarships, although that is important, but there are important strategies that get them there, right? You can't just wing it and call it a day and hope that it works for the best. And what I like most about what you're doing right now, you've got 2 fabulous books out that these kids really need. And your first book, being about English grammar and punctuation, is essential when it comes to writing those essays that they need to write, both for scholarships and for college applications. And of course, well, just being successful in school, you've got to be able to write. And then, after school, let's face it, the real world of work does require writing in a lot of different circumstances, even if it's just writing an email. A lot of people will wonder about that. It's like, well, come on, Denise, your husband's in his 50s. Really? You still need to write when you're older? Yes. Even when it comes to just writing emails, you might be writing emails to your boss or your boss's boss or to a potential client or a client. And that grammar and punctuation needs to be perfect. Am I right?
As perfect as possible.
Yeah.
But because typically when you meet people, that's the first way you meet them, is either speaking to them or writing to them. And so you don't usually get a second chance to make a first impression, although sometimes you do. But it's important to put your best foot forward as much as possible. But you don't have to be perfect, because no one's perfect. But I can guarantee you that my English grammar has improved immensely since I wrote this book. It took me 7 years to write the first book, and this second one's much faster. It's still not finished, but it's getting close.
Well, we're looking forward to that second book, because for me, I also work with college students, and it's important to be able to study. That's a big deal. A lot of kids come out of high school into college, and they just don't have the skills. They just don't have those study skills.
I can tell you that I found out when I started teaching university. I started out teaching high school chemistry, and I learned how to study in college to teach chemistry, because that's a difficult subject. But I found out as I progressed through superintendent or principal jobs, superintendent jobs, and university jobs, that you have to do a lot of writing, and you have to be able to communicate both orally and written. And if you don't communicate succinctly and correctly, it makes you look kind of less than smart. And so you don't make a good impression. And So the second book is something that I have a passion for because I believe so many people just do not know how to study. Sometimes it's their fault, they're lazy. And then there's people that just don't want to put any effort out at all. They think everything comes just easy peasy, but that's not the way life is. Most things you have to work. You do not get free things, although some people do seem to get free things. But in the end, you have to pay a price, a certain price for everything. So why not study smarter rather than harder? And it saves you time and it's easier and it's really not difficult if you know how to do it.
And I think that's the biggest problem, is that our kids are not being taught how to study.
You're
Back,
exact.
I mean, seriously, 30 plus years ago, whenever I was in college,
Mhm.
we were required at the university level to take a study skills and time
Yeah.
management course. It was essential. You had no choice. It was something all freshmen had to take. They did give us 1 credit hour for it
Right.
as an
Right.
incentive to show up, right?
Right.
But I don't know at what point
They,
in
they,
time universities stopped teaching this, but it's gone.
they don't do that anymore. And
Yep.
high schools do not do that anymore either. They just seem to not have the time to basically teach students how to study. And it's really not rocket science. It's simple, simple things that, for example, one thing you can do is study in 30-minute segments and take a 5-minute break and do that several days in advance over a longer period of time. And it works. And you're doing easy stuff, but you remember things. Of
Well,
course, I'm the note card king.
what is it about that the studying in increments? Why is it that that works?
Well, I've done a lot of research on that, and I've been told by some people smarter than me that you tend to remember the first thing you study and the last thing you study. So rather than studying for 4 or 5 hours, remember two things. At the end of 4 hours, study for 30 minutes at a time, take a 5-minute break, and then do that for 4 or 5 times. And then you remember 8 things or 9 things. And of course, you get better after you do it. You can sometimes increase that 30 minutes to 35 or 40, but you need that 5-minute break where you just do exercises, get something to eat, or just rest and then go back to it. And that seems to be the research. And there are certain ways to study smarter. And one of the best ways, I believe, is note cards. And I'm a note card fan, and I've been one since 50 years ago when I first started college. I found out that note cards are one way to remember facts, and they can be used in lots of different content areas, but some work better than others. They're especially useful in science because, and I recommend that you make note cards yourself. I don't recommend you do the applications. There are several note card flashcard applications that are good, like Cram, I think, and there's a couple others. But I recommend you doing the old-fashioned way, where you take the card, you write the thing on one side, the definition on the other, put it in a recipe box, and go through them manually. Because it's been proven that you remember things when you say them out loud and when you write them. And that helps reinforce that memory, and the memory lasts longer because you are forced to read it, you're forced to write it and say it out loud. And it works. It's worked for me many, many times, and I use it to this day. I wrote both books using the note card system.
That's awesome. I do remember back when I was homeschooling my kids, reading a research paper that talked specifically about doing just that, how to study. And it was talking about using all of your senses as much as possible throughout that study mechanism. And handwriting uses a different part of your brain than typing something on a computer or even typing it and printing it out. And of course, hearing it is either replaying it on an audio or hearing yourself speak it, the whole
Right.
thing like that. It's not something our kids are doing. And yes, it takes time, but let's face it, if that time is well spent, because now you're actually studying and you're learning the material.
And you make better grades than what you did before. And grades are not the most important thing, but it's beneficial for scholarships to have good grades, even though there are scholarships available that do not particularly pertain to grades. But a great many of them, you have to have a certain GPA, and the better GPA you have, probably the better chances you get at getting a scholarship. But a lot of people just don't want to put the effort out, and you just cannot make it if you don't put some effort out. You just have to put some effort, but why not do it smarter and quicker? And my giveaway I'm going to give people who email me is how to read a chapter in a textbook efficiently and effectively and quickly. And you don't have to read the whole chapter word for word. You can skip around, do different things, and never reread stuff unless you just don't understand it. Then you reread it. If you read it the first time you understand it, don't read it again. You don't need to. If you once know something and you know it, why would you spend time reading and studying it again? Forget that. Study the stuff you don't know. That's an easy time saver.
That's
and I've done
awesome.
that during my years too. But I've improved a lot of my study skills by actually practicing things, because I found that one size does not fit all. And some people study better with note cards, and some people study better with other methods. And there's a ton of methods out there. And some methods work better for some people than others. Now, I'm pretty much an audio and a visual learner, but I'm probably more of an audio learner than I am visual, but I can do both. But there are people that can only do one. So go ahead and do that, but work on the other one to improve that, because you can improve the one you don't do well in if you work at it. And you got to put the effort out. You just don't get too many places without putting some effort out, unless you're just really lucky. And I always spelled luck as W-O-R-K instead of L-U-C-K, because you got to work at it. It
You
just
do.
doesn't come usually unless you're really, really brilliant. There are a few people that are just, they are really, really brilliant. They can see something and they have a photographic memory, but I was not blessed with that. I have to work at it, but I have to work smart, because I want to do other things and just study 8 hours.
Absolutely. I think that's the key right there, is that there's more to life than just studying and doing homework and getting ahead in that way. You do have to do that. You do have to work in order to make things happen for your life.
Okay.
But if you're working double the effort that's necessary, why not find keys and tips and strategies that will actually help you make things happen? I think that it's just phenomenal that you've put these things together for our kids. I think that it's definitely needed for both high school and college students. I'm sure that you saw both as an issue in your
I did.
studies. Yeah.
I did. I've been blessed with some really, really good students through the years, and they just caught on really fast, and they just did well. But most of them did some work. Some did more work than others. But I've also had some students that just amazed me, that how lackadaisical and how disorganized they were, and how they really didn't care. I mean, I told them, I said, "What are you going to do for life?" And they said, "I'm not worried about it." I said, "Well, you've got to do well, and you're going to be tested, and you're going to have to produce. You're not going to be able to get a job unless you can be valuable to your employer. And they're not going to pay you to sit there and look pretty. You're going to have to work and produce. And if you can't produce, guess what? You're not going to have a job." I always told my kids that reading is extremely important. If you can read and you can think and you can solve problems, there's not anything you can't do if you want to work at it. Now, if you can't do those things and you're not willing to learn how to do them, you are not going to do well. It's just, you are not going to be able to do anything except maybe flip burgers at the hamburger place. And with AI and artificial intelligence, they're going to get a machine to do that, and you won't even have that job.
You are right. You are right.
So you're going to have to do some work. So why not start early? And I always tell parents, why not help your kids? Parents are the first teachers of their kids, and they can make an immediate difference. As to one thing, they can read to their kids, and they can have their kids read to them. And it makes an immense difference in their attitude. And if you can get your kids to read, learn how to read well, it's one of the keys to success. I find most people that read well do well in school, and ones
Yeah,
who don't read well do poorly in school. But you can fix that. Never too late. And one of the
that's right.
examples in my first book is a guy that was a basketball coach and an English teacher in California, and he cheated his way through school, got the other girls when he was in high school and college athlete to do the work for him. And he actually got a job because his dad filled out his application, and he got a job teaching English and coaching basketball in California for how many years? 17 years. And he couldn't read or write during those 17 years. And he carried books around and had students read the announcements and stuff. And he was an English teacher and he couldn't read or write.
Wow.
But he made it because he cheated his way through. So he finally, though, at age 48, learned how to read and write. And it's an interesting story. If anybody wants to Google it, just Google the basketball player who couldn't read, who ended up being an English teacher, something like that. And you'll find his name. He has a foundation now, and he found out he had to read at some point, but he was afraid he was going to get caught and get fired because he literally couldn't read. It's amazing you can get through and be an English teacher and not be able to read or write, but it happens. But most time it doesn't happen. You don't get the job.
Yeah, that's just
when
luck.
when I was superintendent, I did a lot of looking at resumes because I would screen the applicants and pick 2 or 3 and then let my principals pick the one out of the 3. And I always picked 3, any of the 3 I would like. And I didn't care which one they picked, but I narrowed down to the 3 and then they picked one of the 3. And, it was funny. They would send me resumes and they'd have errors in their resumes. It was pathetic. And I've had a rule. If you had over 3 errors in a resume, I didn't read it. I put it in a pile and never looked at it again. So I told my college kids that because I taught students how to be teachers, and they said, "That's not fair." I said, "What do you mean it's not fair?
Excuse me?
You're going to teach for me, and you're going to teach kids, and you're going to have to correspond with teachers and parents and your kids. And if you can't do this, why would I want to hire you?"
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
it's not fair. You should give them another chance. I said, "No, I'm
No,
not giving them
no.
another chance."
Well, and today kids need to understand one of the things that I try to make sure that they understand when they're making their college applications and their scholarship applications, but especially for college applications, colleges have readers. Basically, there's a number of people that they have either
Mhm.
hired or are volunteering, whatever it might be for that school,
Right,
who are given 50 to 500 applications to
right,
screen per day.
right.
And those people are looking at those applications and they're not looking for the best people. They're looking for who can we toss out? That is the first category. Who sucks? And what is it? Errors, any kind of error, and it's gone,
That's right.
done. You crappy grammar, out of here,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So
Spelling,
those
if you got
simple
spell
errors, take
check,
it
I
out.
mean, there's so many ways to do that. I always told kids, there's no rule or law I know of, but you can't get people to look at your stuff before you send it in.
Thank
I
you.
remember when I taught at Illinois State University, I was teaching a doctoral program there for 1 year as a visiting professor, and my specialty was school law because I've been sued 5 times and won all 5 cases. So one of the guys I had was a high school principal. I won't give his name or tell the high school, but it was a big high school. And he sent his paper in for the law part, and it was terrible. I looked at it, read through it, and so I called him. I said, "Did you write that?" He said, "Well, yeah, I wrote that." I said, "Did you have anybody proof that?" "Oh, no." I said, "This is not going to fly." you know. "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "You got too many errors." He said, "Whoa." I said, "Okay, let me tell you how to fix this." He said, "How's that?" I said, "Do you have any English teachers in that high school?" "Oh, yeah, about 10 of them." And I said, "Any of them any good?" "Oh, yeah." I said, "Why don't you take one out for dinner, buy that person a steak and get that person to proof your work and then read it and send it back. Can you do that?" I said, "Yeah, you can do that. Why not?" He said, "Okay." So that's what he did. So it came back as pretty good. But I don't know if he learned anything or not, but he didn't get by with it because it was pathetic. And he was a high school principal in a large
And
school.
that's really sad. And I do the
It's
same
sad.
thing. I tell my families that, look, if your teenager is filling out an application, they have to have someone with that they perceive to have impeccable English grammar to proofread the entire application. It
Exactly.
can be a parent, it can be an English teacher, it can be another student that got almost perfect score on their ACT or SAT in that English grammar section.
Mhm.
But they have to have somebody proofread it. Now, I heard of one student, was not one of mine, who did not want anyone reading over their application. And it's like, no, this doesn't fly. First of all, if you're writing something in the essay itself, maybe the content is something you don't want anyone else to read. Look, if it's something you don't want your parents to read, or if it's something that only a therapist should read, then the answer is no, it's the wrong topic. Okay, so let's move on from that. But someone has to check it for proper grammar and punctuation and things like that. It's just too important of an item to be able to
Well,
just wing it and do it on your own.
you know, even if you're really good, and I'm not really good, I've struggled in grammar my whole life, never thought it was important until I got to writing things, and I found out it was. But even if you're good at grammar, you need other people to proof your work, because it is very difficult, if not impossible, to proof your own work, because you see things that aren't there because you look at it and you miss it. And
True.
a friend of mine is a author, probably has written 50 books, I don't know, something like that. And he was talking to me one day, and he's one of my mentors, and he said, he said, when I first started writing, he said, I used to have my work proofed like 10 times. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no. He said, I had it proofed 10 times. I said, you still do that? He said, no. He said, I've written 50 books. I only have it done 3 times now. I said, you've written 50 books and you still have it proofed 3 times? He said, yeah. He said, that's just smart. They've been smart,
Yeah.
because there's things I missed that other people catch. And said, I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty good with 50 books. I said, well, I've read your stuff. I think you are good. So even if you're an expert at it, you still need to get someone else to proof your work. And I've proofed a few people's work, and I found some errors, and I had my work proofed. And I'll tell you a quick story. My editor on the first book was an English teacher and a college president, and he was an English teacher, and he proofed my work and helped me with it and so forth. And I was bringing the books home after they were printed, and I found an error where I had reversed commas on essential clauses and non-essential clauses, and I had it backwards. And he proofed it, and I proofed it, and 2 or 3 other people proofed it, and none of us caught that error. And it was right in the book. And I drove off the road. I thought, that is so stupid that I missed that. I had them reversed. So I got that corrected when I redid the second edition of it. But this guy was an English teacher and then a president of university, and he missed it. So it's difficult, especially grammar. It's so, like now you can end a sentence and a preposition. Used to you couldn't do that, but now you can. You can start a sentence with a preposition. Used to, now you can't do that. I still recommend, though, if you're writing an application or you're writing an important letter, you not do that, because it makes you look bad, even though it's permissible. And the person reading it may not agree with that. It may not agree that you should have, you can have a sentence starting with a preposition. So you just kind of ask them for trouble. So just fix it, rewrite it, so it doesn't do that. And then you don't have to worry about it. But just common kind of conversation, you can, all the time you can end sentences with prepositions. But on page 74 in my book, first book, there's a page on how to never ever make a comma error again.
Wow.
And that's an interesting page, 2 pages actually, 74 and 75. And I'll tell you the answer. You learn 5 to 6 rules of grammar, on commas. You learn them well. And then you look at sentences, and if they fit that type, those 5 rules, they're correct comma wise. Now, if you see a sentence and it doesn't fit one of those 5 rules, 6 rules, what do you do?
That's a good question.
What would you do?
I would probably look it up. Google is my friend.
You can do that. There's an easy way to do that, though.
What's that?
Just rewrite the sentence to fit one of those six.
That's
And you,
brilliant. I love it.
and you do it all the time. It's called recasting, and you do it all the time. And it's a lot of people say, "Well, add a comma something." No, you don't do that. Or just don't put it in there. I said you do that, rewrite, but it's rewriting the sentence to one of those six. Now, you'll never ever, now you may make some other errors like dangling participles and wrong tense and on and on and on, but you won't make any comma errors. So that's one of the
That's
tips
awesome.
in the first book, page 74 and 75. So anyway, so what other questions did you have for me?
Well, you've mentioned a couple of really important, easy study skill methods. What are some other options that our kids might have for study skills, especially going into college? I know that that's a big deal with, just anything. College is tough to begin with, but let's at least start off with the right foot and be able to study.
Let me give you a couple that I've used, and there's pros and cons on these. It's like anything, there's not anything that's 100% perfect, although note cards are one of the best ones in my opinion, but that's just one of the best. But here's a good one is to make your own test up. Construct your own tests using the chapter or using the lecture notes. Like you play the teacher and make your own test up and then take those tests. Many times when you take the test, you'll see the same material. Maybe it's not written the same way, but the same material. So if you test yourself, that's a good one. Another one is, although there's some negatives about it, is to get a study group on. And study groups are beneficial if the people in the group participate equally and get involved. Not to just want to BS and have fun and so forth, then it's a waste of time. So you need to pick a study group that will do their share and meet on a regular basis. I did that for my PhD. I had a study group that there were about 4 or 5 of us in, and we met once a week, and it was real helpful. I also did it for statistics because statistics, I had to take 2 stat classes for PhD. And math is not one of my best areas. Science is, but not math. And so we had a study group on statistics, and we met once a week, and we would do the problems, explain to each other. So we would actually teach the problems to each other. And that's kind of cool because you tend to listen to your peers. Also, it helps you when you teach someone because you don't want to look stupid and try to teach someone something you don't know, right? Although it happens, but it's best to learn the stuff you're going to teach so you can teach it, right? That's a tip. Another tip that I found is real good is when you do things, try to put those facts and principles in your own words rather than memorize something that is complicated. Go through it, break it down, put it in your own words so you understand it, because you're going to remember it better. Another tip that I found is really good is when you're studying, don't get distracted by a lot of extraneous stuff. Some say they study well with music. I don't know. I sometimes use classical music, but I don't like a lot of noise. I want quiet and I want to pay attention. I don't want distractions like cell phones and that kind of stuff. And that's what a lot of kids do is they just get in groups and they don't study correctly. And so those are some tips that work. Another one is when you take notes, use a system like the Cornell system, because that's one of the best ones out there. There's a lot of note-taking systems, but the Cornell is the one I recommend. And there's a very detailed discussion in the book on the Cornell system. I think it's one of the best. Another one is to have a to-do list, and that's an old-fashioned thing where you pick 10 things you want to do, put them in order of priority, start with number 1, finish it, go to number 2. If you don't get that finished, put that to number 2 or number 1 the next day, and keep 10 things going. And if you get all 10 of them done, great, but probably you're not going to do that. And so those are some other tips that work, and they're not rocket science. They don't cost a lot of money. And keep a notebook. Keep a notebook that has key points and stuff. So there are lots of ways. You can even use what they call them, what they call these little note things. Well, they post-it notes. You can even use post-it notes and put things on post-it notes. I mean, there are so many ways to do that. But those are
Absolutely.
some. There's just some way. There are tons of them. I got over 77 in my book. But another thing in my book that's interesting is there's a chapter on advice from experts, and I've contacted about 35 people: a medical doctor, a lawyer, a CPA, let's say students, teachers, professors, and I asked them to submit a practical tip or two at what they actually use in college to study more effectively and be successful in their chosen career. So I've got a lot of good ones. Some are repeats, but I got some practical tips that people actually use that actually work, and that's called my chapter for experts. And I got a couple of my tips in there too. So
That's going to be awesome. I cannot wait. Do you happen to have, Dr. K, a particular idea of when this second book might be released?
I'm thinking it's going to be in about 2 months. It's pretty much done. One of the chapter on advice from experts is finished. I've already had it edited once by a friend of mine, and it's going to be edited again because I'm going to edit things at least twice, maybe 3 times. But I'm thinking that it's going to be a couple of months because I've signed a contract, not a signed contract, but I made arrangements this time to get someone to help me publish a book. The first book I did self-published, pretty much as a hybrid approach, but I did most of that myself. And the second book, I've got an outfit that cost me a little bit of money, but some friends of mine have used them, and they produce the book, print the book, and you do some of the stuff, but they do more of it, and they have a professional editor and all that stuff. So it's going to be pretty quickly. So I have the time to work on it. So I'm thinking about 2 months that it'll be out. But the first book is available now on Amazon.com. It's a print book or an ebook. Second book will be on Amazon.com, but a couple of months.
That's awesome, Dr. K. Well, let me ask you this then. First of all, I am so excited that you were able to join us today. You've given us so many things that our families can get help with. So how can our families get in touch with you for your resources?
Well, there's a couple ways to get in touch with me. I have a website that I'm working on. It's revising it. It's mostly on my first book, but I'm going to add parts of my second book to it in the near future. But it's www.onewordwritewellrightnow.org, and it's WRITEWELLRIGHTNOW.org. And it has most of the stuff on it now on the first book, but in the near future, there'll be different things to the second book on there as well. And that's one way. I even sell some of my books through there as well. But that's one way. My email, I respond to emails, and it's notecardrings@gmail.com. And it's NOTECARDRINGS@gmail.com. Those are the two main ways. And I answer questions. I respond to all my email. I don't respond to all my unless I know the people or what they're writing about, because otherwise I'd be doing nothing but answering emails all day long. But yeah, that's the best two ways to get a hold of me. And I do have this giveaway that if people want to contact me, I will send them free, no obligation or anything that they have. They can get it free. It's how to read a chapter quickly and efficiently, and I'll send that to them. And I probably will be doing some pre-order of my second book, and that will be available. I haven't got that on the website yet, but I think I will probably try some pre-order, and it's probably going to be about $14.95. So it's going to be the price, the same price as the first book is now. And there'll be an ebook, which will be probably $5.99 or something like that. So when that comes out, they can get the ebook if they want. There is an ebook on the first book, so they can get that as they want. But so I'll give that to them. If just send me an email and ask for this gift, I'll send it to them. and they can download it and start using it.
That's fabulous, Dr. K. Well, we will put all of those links in the show
Okay.
notes for everyone. So make sure that you guys check that out and get in touch with Dr. K. Dr. K, thank you so much for being
Okay.
with us. We really
Yeah.
appreciate your time and your effort in helping our students be successful in life.
Yeah, I'd like to end with something that is worthwhile for people to consider. I don't know who wrote this, but several people have used it. When adversity comes, some people are break, while other people set records. And I think so many people now, when a little adversity comes up, they just follow their tent. They quit. They just don't want to fail, and so they just quit. Well, that's the time to dig deeper, work harder, and make a record instead of just failing. Because failure is not always fatal. You learn more when you fail than when you succeed, or I have anyway. So pick up where you're from, where you see why you must, and find out why, and find out what to do better to improve. And process, I think we're all in that. And so if you first you don't succeed, try again.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you again,
Okay.
Dr. K. We really
All right.
appreciate it. And we'll see
Okay,
you again
thank
next
you.
time.
Good luck to you, and we'll see you. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.